class. In today's video, we're going to be revising over positive and negative integers. As you can see by the example over here, you've got -4 plus by a -6 number. Now, what you need to realize is that the operation, the symbol for this particular equation is the addition sign, which is found in between these two numbers. And now this addition sign tells you which direction that you need to face. So because this is a positive, you need to be facing the positive direction, and the positive direction is found towards the right, whereas a negative direction is found towards the left. You've got the -6, and this tells you how many spaces that you need to move based on this direction over here, the one that was in front of it previously. So in this case, -4 is over here, so you're facing towards a positive direction because that is the positive sign, the addition sign of here. Now the -6 tells you which direction that you need to be facing. So because -6 is the opposite of addition, you're going to be moving backwards. So you're going to be moving 6 units backwards like so. So if you move 6 units backwards, it would look like this. And therefore, if you move 6 units backwards, the answer is going to become -10. Let's look at some more examples so this becomes more familiar to you guys. So now you've got -4, subtract by -6. Now the only difference between this example compared to the previous example is that you now have a negative sign. Now how does this actually change the actual answer? Well, now you're going to be facing the opposite direction. And because you're facing this direction now, you're going to be moving -6. So that means 6 units backwards to the way that you're actually facing. Since you're facing this way, you're going to be moving in this direction as you move back. So therefore, if you're moving 6 units backwards, the answer now is a bit different, and now you're going to end up with +2. Now, you don't need to really indicate that it's a positive. If you don't include a sign at all, it's kind of implied that it's positive, but if you can include it if you like though. In our third example, we've got 3 subtract by +4. Now again, the subtraction sign over here indicates which direction you need to be facing. So you're facing towards the left, and the +4 indicates how many spaces that you need to move either forward or backward. Because it's a positive, you're going to be moving forward, and so therefore if you move 4 spaces up, your answer is therefore going to become -1. And in our last example, we've got the subtraction sign again, so therefore you're going to be looking towards the left, but you've got +4, so therefore you're also going to be moving forward. Therefore your answer in this case is going to become -7. So this is pretty much a summarized view of how you can actually think of it. It's more of a shortcut in this case over here. So if you don't want to think about it diagrammatically, which I've shown you in the previous examples, you can kind of just memorize these formulas over here. So this just indicates that when you've got two unlike signs or two different signs that's right beside one another, this overall makes it a negative sign or a subtraction sign. However, if you've got two positive signs next to each other, then this becomes a positive sign. So for instance, in our example over here, if our question was 2 plus -4, these two symbols are right beside each other. And because these are two different signs, this now becomes a subtraction sign. So it's therefore read as 2 take away 4. And you know that 2 take away 4 is equal to -2. In our next example, you've got these two different signs, so therefore this now becomes a takeaway between these two, so we can kind of get rid of this. So therefore the question is -4 take away 3, and this is going to equal to -7 because you're subtracting, you're moving towards to the left, and therefore you're going to get a more negative answer. And in our last example, when you've got two negatives next to each other, any two signs that are exactly the same, this now becomes an addition symbol. So this becomes an addition symbol. We can ignore this. So the question can kind of be read as -5 plus 1, which is equal to -4. Now, to complete this particular exercise, what you need to do is you need to take the outside numbers and you need to add them together. So to complete the very first row over here, I've got +2 plus -1. Now, as I said earlier on, when you've got two different symbols that are right next to each other, this now becomes a takeaway sign. So therefore, when I'm reading this equation, it essentially becomes +2 take away 1. We know that 2 take away 1 is equal to 1, so 1 goes here. We'll do the exact same thing. So now +2 plus 0 is equal to 2. 2 plus 1 is equal to 3, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, 2 plus 3 is equal to 5. So that's how we fill out the first row. We'll do the exact same thing with the second row. So +1 take away, positive 1 plus takeaway 1. Now, in this case, again, two different signs in between. So therefore, this becomes a takeaway sign in between. So 1 takeaway 1 is equal to 0. 1 plus 0 is equal to 1. 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, 3, 4, and so forth. 0 plus negative 1 is equal to negative 1. This equals to 0, 1, 2, 3. Now, to complete the next one, it is going to be negative 1 plus by a negative 1. Again, this becomes takeaway. So what is negative 1 takeaway 1? So therefore, that is going to be equal to negative 2. And I can kind of also show that on another line if you don't understand how I arrived to the answer. So negative 1 would lie over here, right? Now, in this case, if you've got a negative sign, so when you simplify it down, the negative is in this direction. So you're going to be looking at this direction and you're going to be moving one direction in that way. So therefore, if you move one direction that way, that will become negative 2. So this is negative 2. This should be equal to negative 1, 0, 1, 2. And for the last row, you've got negative 2 plus by negative 1. This becomes takeaway, so therefore it reads out as negative 2 takeaway 1. This equals to negative 3. So this is negative 3. This becomes negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1. So that's the answer for the very first grid. Now, to complete the second grid, you do the exact same thing. So if you're applying the same principles, the first answer that you should get in your grid should be equal to negative 5. This should therefore equal to negative 1. This should equal to positive 3. Now, again, as I said earlier on during the video, you don't need to indicate the plus sign at all when it's a positive because that's kind of implied. You can, you cannot, it doesn't make a difference at all. Now, for the next one, negative 2 plus by negative 2. So in this case over here, this is going to become negative 4. And I can kind of show you that over here as well. So when you've got two different signs, remember this becomes a takeaway. So negative 2 takeaway 2 does become negative 4 in this case. And the next one is negative 2 plus negative 1. So therefore, this equals to negative 3. Moving on to the next row, negative 5 plus negative 3 is equal to negative 8. Negative 5 plus 1 is going to equal to negative 4. Negative 5 plus positive 5 is going to equal to 0. Negative 5 plus negative 2 is going to equal to negative 7. Negative 5 plus negative 1 is going to equal to negative 6. Moving to the next row, positive 2 plus negative 3 is going to equal to negative 1. Plus 2 plus 1 is going to equal to 3. 2 plus 5 is going to equal to 7. 2 plus negative 2 is equal to 0. 2 plus negative 1 is equal to 1. Moving to the next row, 4 plus negative 3 is equal to 1. 4 plus 1 is equal to 5. 4 plus 5 is equal to 9. 4 plus negative 2 is equal to 2. 4 plus negative 1 is equal to 3. Next row, the answer should be negative 9. This should equal to negative 5. The next one should equal to 6 plus 5 is equal to negative 1. Negative 6 plus negative 2 is equal to negative 8. Negative 6 plus negative 1 is equal to negative 7. So this is the answer for the second one. Now, these were the solutions for the other two grid papers that I asked you to actually do for homework. Now, these particular grid were actually really complicated, and I don't think many of you would actually get this correct, and don't be stressed if you do. These questions actually took me quite a long time to do, but if you did this successfully, then that means you've actually got a really good understanding of how to actually add and subtract positive and negative integers. I think this work would actually be harder even for a year 10 to actually complete as well, so don't be too hard on yourself. Now, these are also some of the questions that I showed you as well yesterday. I did ask some students that if you could do these questions, and I highly recommend it. So what I'm going to be doing now is going over the solutions to this. If you haven't done this at all yesterday, then please answer these questions now. The recommended time frame is about 5 minutes, and then afterwards compare your answers with my answers. Now, I'm going to go through the answers for the first one. So remember, when you've got a positive and a negative, again, this makes a takeaway sign. So what is 2 takeaway 3? Well, that is equal to negative 1. Now, part B, negative 4. Now, notice you've got two symbols that are the same. When you've got two symbols, this becomes a positive. So what is negative 4 plus 4? This is going to equal to 0. You've got two different signs, therefore this is a takeaway. So what is negative 4 take away 2? This becomes more negative, so it's going to become negative 6. For part D, two different symbols, so you've got a takeaway. Negative 3 take away 1 is going to equal to negative 4. Next example is negative 1 take away. Essentially, this is a positive 4, but we didn't really write it. So negative 1 take away 4, that's going to equal to negative 5. 1 plus negative 1, two different signs, so therefore it becomes a takeaway overall. So what is 1 take away 1? That equals to 0. Negative 4 plus 3, that's going to equal to negative 1. 3 take away negative 7, this is because the signs are the same, this becomes a positive. This is going to equal to 10, and I've got the last example already shown to you. Now for question 2, the way that you answer question 2 is that you take the numbers right next to each other, the one that are adjacent or side by side, and add these two numbers to get the numbers on top. So what is 3 plus negative 2? 3 plus negative 2 is equal to positive 1. So positive 1 goes over here. Now to get this box over here, you add these two numbers together. So what is negative 2 plus negative 4? If you did this correctly, you should get negative 6. And in order to get this box, you therefore just add these two boxes together. So what is positive 1 plus negative 6? If you did this correctly, you should get an answer of negative 5. Moving on to the next example over here. Because I've got these two numbers, I can therefore find what this is going to be. So therefore, negative 4 plus 5 is equal to positive 1. And in order to get this box over here, since I know that this plus this must equal to negative 7, the way that I work this out is I just go negative 7, essentially subtract, do the opposite of negative 4, and that will give me my answer. You've got two negatives over here. This becomes a positive. So therefore, negative 7 plus 4 is going to equal to negative 3. And I can double check that to see whether this gives me negative 7. And which it does, because negative 3 plus negative 4 does give me negative 7. And lastly, to get this one, add these two numbers. So negative 7 plus 1 is going to equal to negative 6. And for the last example on this slide over here, in order to get this, I have to work backwards from the top. So I have to first find out what this is. Since I know that this plus this gives me 0, this must indicate that this must be a positive 3, because a positive 3, when you add it by the opposite value, is going to equal to 0. So now that I've got that, I can therefore find out what these two numbers are going to be, because I know that this and this must give you this. So negative 3 take away 2 is going to equal to negative 5. So negative 5 is over here. And to get what this one over here is, it's going to be positive 3 take away 5. These are the same. So this becomes a positive. 3 plus 5 is equal to 8. Now these examples over here, well, question 2 is a bit more hard because it's a bit more problem solving. So don't be too concerned if you don't understand how I got the answers for that. But the answers for question 1 is going to be more relevant and related to your post test. So make sure that you are getting those answers correctly. Now that we've gone through the basics and the foundations of adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers, we're now going to be looking at worded problems of how do we actually write an equation to actually solve the problem. So we're now going to be looking at representing real-world situations using integers. Now, in order to actually solve the word problem, what you need to know is that there are key words, which are generally verbs, which are action words, that have specific meaning in mathematics that help us indicate whether the number is going to be a positive or a negative number. So in my first example, a 30-degree drop in temperature. The verb in this case is drop, and this particular word over here, drop, has a negative connotation to it. So this means that it is going down. And because it's going down, the sign in this case is going to be negative 30. So we can actually represent this by writing negative 30 to show that it's decreased by 30 degrees. For my second example, a $450 deposit. Now the word deposit means that you're actually putting money into the bank, okay? And because you're putting more money into your own bank or into your own savings account, this means you're growing, you're gaining more money. So therefore, because you're gaining, this has a positive sign. So this will be positive 450. And for my last example, a weight loss of 5 kilograms. The verb loss means that it's reducing, and when something's reducing, this indicates that it has a negative sign. So therefore, I could write this by writing -5. Now, this particular slide over here kind of summarizes or shows all the different words that you're going to be encountering, which you need to be able to identify whether this means that it's going to be a positive sign or whether it's going to be a negative sign. So if you copy down all the notes on this particular slide over here, anything that is found on the left column, these words indicate that the number right next to it is going to be a positive sign. So when you're depositing, let's say $100, therefore this is going to be plus 100. Whereas if you're going to be withdrawing $100, meaning taking money out, this is a subtraction, this is a negative, so therefore it's going to be negative 100 in this case. So please copy down this list, and if you refer to this list when you're answering the questions, you should have no problems whatsoever. So let's look at 3 particular examples before I get you to answer some questions on your own. Now, in our very first example, it reads, the temperature in the desert is -12 degrees Celsius, but rises by 20 degrees. What is the new temperature? When we're answering worded problems, it's really important that you guys actually highlight the very key important informations so that you can actually answer the question. So what I've highlighted is I've highlighted the word rises because I know that rise means increase, and when I'm increasing, this is kind of like a plus sign because I'm gaining things. So you're starting off with -12, so I'm going to write -12. So that's my initial amount. The question says it is rising by 20 degrees. We said rising is the same thing as adding. So therefore, if I add 20, this is going to get me to my answer. Now, once we've generated what the equation is, I can now just solve it quite simply. So -12 plus 20, that's going to equal to 8. Now, many students leave their answers as this, but this is actually unacceptable. Now, the reason why it's unacceptable because they've actually given units. So therefore, make sure you include units to your final answer. So therefore, because this is talking about temperature, we need to include the degree sign as well as the Celsius. So the answer is going to be, the new temperature is going to be 8 degrees Celsius. For my second example, it reads, Melbourne is 7 feet below sea level and Sydney is 8 feet above sea level. How far apart are they in terms of like the elevation in this case? So in this case over here, it says Melbourne is 7 feet below. So I can represent that down over here. So on this number line. Whereas it says Sydney is 8 feet above sea level. So this is just the ground floor over here. So therefore 8 feet above would be over here. What you're trying to do is you're trying to find out what is this distance over here, how far apart are they? So in order to do that, all I need to do is just pretty much count the spaces in between them. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep adding this all together. And if you do this correctly, you should obtain an answer of 15 feet. And again, make sure you are including what the units are because they provided you the units already. And I've highlighted that. Now in our final example, the question reads, an ocean sensor is initially at -90 meters, aka this also means it's just 90 meters below the sea level. The sensor is raised 50 meters, lowered by 138 meters, and then finally raised again by 35 meters. What is the probe's final position? So in order to answer this, what you need to do is just highlight some key informations. I've already highlighted what the units are, so that your final units is going to be in meters. But it says you're raising. So raising is synonymous, meaning the same thing as adding. So you're going to have an addition sign. And it also has the words lowered and below. And this is the opposite of raising. So therefore, this is going to have a subtraction sign. So the initial value, the beginning value was at -90, meaning that this is below sea level. So if I was to draw this, this is the sea over here. This -90 meters would be over here. So that's 90 meters below sea level. And that over there represents your sea level. Now it says the sensor is raised by 50 meters, so therefore you're going to be adding in this case. Then you need to subtract because you're lowering it down. So you're subtracting it by 138. And then finally, you're going to be adding it by 35 meters. Now, because these numbers are relatively large, you could actually put all these numbers into a calculator. And if you did this correctly, you should get an answer of negative 143 meters. Now, in this case over here, to properly answer this question, because you've got a negative sign, you kind of have to tell me what does that negative sign mean. So in this case over here, because it told us that the negative sign initially meant below sea level, the way that I'd answer this is I'd say the probe is 143 meters below sea level. And that is how you would actually answer the question and obtain full marks. Now, your learning task for the remainder of this video is that you're going to be answering the following questions that's found in this particular activity over here. So what this activity is you've got a maze and you want to get to the finish line, which is found over here, and the starting position is found over here. Now, the way that you kind of navigate through this particular maze is you answer the question, and depending on what your answer is, you're going to be moving in that particular direction. So I'll go through some of the examples just so you have a better understanding of how to solve this. So the question reads, the temperature this morning was -3 degrees, and by noon, so by afternoon, it has risen or increased by 8 degrees Celsius. What was the temperature at noon? So it means at the beginning, you've got -3. Make sure you try to show all working out. So you've got -3 Celsius, and it has risen, meaning it has increased by 8. So this is my equation of here. All you need to do is you need to solve this. So -3 plus 8, what would that answer become? Now notice in your maze of here, you've got 3 options, or you've got 3 possible answers. It could be either equal to 5, -5, or -11. You need to determine which one of these is the correct answer. Now in this case over here, the correct answer is going to be +5, so therefore you're going to be moving to the left. So what you'll do is, if you printed this out, you would be coloring this in, meaning you're going to be moving in this direction, and then answer this equation to find out where you're going to be moving next. Are you going to be moving this direction? Are you going to be moving this direction? Or are you going to be moving this direction? So that is how you're going to actually solve this. Now, obviously, if you don't have a printer at all, you wouldn't be really able to actually complete the actual maze activity. However, I still want you to actually answer the questions inside your exercise book. So write down the questions and answer. You obviously wouldn't be able to do the fun component of it, where you have to color in and shade the direction that in order to actually solve the maze, but this is what you should be able to do for your upcoming revision. Now, once you've actually finished that, you also have these Google Forms that you could also do as well. So make sure you complete the Google Forms if you haven't done it already. The Google Forms is set up in such a way that you can actually repeat it as many times as you like. This is pretty much the end of today's video. Hopefully you liked it. I'll see you guys again. Bye.